Computer-generated chess problem 2713 by Chesthetica. White has a pair of rooks, pair of bishops, and a knight. Black has a queen, rook, and pair of bishops. Now, perhaps most obviously in this position is that the queen is under attack by the rook on h2, which itself is under attack by the bishop on g3 and the rook on e2, which itself is under attack by the bishop on d3. So there's something of a web of attacks or a chain of attacks going on here. The bishop on e6 is defended by that rook on e2, so capturing the bishop probably wouldn't make much sense. So what if white does the obvious thing, which is to capture the queen? Well, then king captures rook, so this is a queen for rook exchange, a favorable exchange for white. And furthermore, white can proceed with bishop captures rook with check, so it's very favorable. After black intervenes, bishop to g4, maybe rook to g6, threatening to capture the g3 bishop if the bishop captures the e2 bishop. King to h4, bishop captures bishop. Black is pretty much lost here and can only buy some time with bishop to e5 check. King to f7, white doesn't mind giving up the bishop on a1, so black captures it. Then bishop to e6, then maybe bishop back to e5, just buying some time. Knight to e3, bishop to h2, knight g2 check, king to h5, followed by bishop to g4, checkmate. Checkmate on the 9th move. Okay. Still, as you might have guessed, that's not the optimal way to play in this position. And here's why. So as you can see, there's a much shorter way to force the win in this position. Instead of capturing the quote-unquote free queen, white sacrifices his rook. Rook to f5, check. Now if king to g4, knight to f6 checkmates immediately. The rook moving to f5 frees that square for the knight. So black does the obvious thing, and in fact has to last as long as possible, with bishop captures rook. And white doesn't recapture. Instead, he plays bishop to f6. Now apparently it's important that the f6 square be vacated for the knight or the bishop in this case. Now the king has to move to g4. But you might have noticed the knight can no longer move to f6 to deliver mate. But the bishop can capture the rook with checkmate and a skewer, no less. The queen behind the king means the bishop is skewering the king. Let's take a look at that one more time. So in this position, rook to f5, check. Do you think you would have seen this? Now if king to g4, why doesn't bishop capture rook work in this case? Because the king can capture the rook. So it's important that the bishop be defending the rook for the moment, which is why after bishop captures rook, bishop to f6. Notice now the f5 square is blocked by black's own piece, the bishop. So after king to g4, bishop captures rook can be played. The f5 square cannot be occupied by the king, and that is checkmate. And notice also in this final position, black actually has more material than white. I hope you enjoyed this one. Until the next one.
Chesthetica's Book of Chess Constructs, Volumes 1 through 5. Available on Amazon.